Okay. This is the population crisis. The marriage divorce rate surprisingly high at 35%. And this is China, right? This is not surprising to me or anyone who really knows human nature. And they're going, what it is, these women, as soon as a country becomes first world and wealthy, the women don't want to get married. They never want to get married to men. And so they're going to point this out as some kind of problem, and they're never going to blame women for what they expect.
According to a set of data recently released by China's Civil Affairs Department, there are currently about a male to female ratio of about 54 to 46. No more than 10 men. The marriage rate is only a little over 10%.
Marriage and love life is not a necessity for me, but it's a necessity for me. I'm probably gonna need it.
See, it's all about peer pressure with her. And guess what? She'll probably blame someone else for her decisions. Whatever her parents say, she doesn't have to get married. And this young woman admitted it. She admitted she doesn't want to get married. She is not interested. Many of us aren't in a rush to get married and have kids. Well, duh.
Aren't in a rush to get married or have kids. It takes a lot of energy and money, and such decisions affect our living standards.
Hold it. It takes a lot of energy and money for the man. For the man. It doesn't take it for the woman. It takes no energy or money to get married if you want to get married. And it shouldn't affect the living standards in a bad way. Okay, let me get a little more brightness here. If a woman actually likes a man for himself and wants to get married with him, they don't have to get a house. They can stay in an apartment together and pool their resources, and their lifestyle becomes better and easier. So for the living standards to go down, what it means is the woman doesn't want to have to work. She's marrying the man, so he works and she doesn't. But she also wants to maintain her lifestyle. So he has to make at least double what she does in order to maintain her lifestyle while she doesn't have to labor. That's what's going on here.
Decisions affect our living standards.
The 80 million of the post-90s should be married by now. Government amid a demographic crisis. According to China.
Now, who cares about the Chinese government? They don't have the people's intentions, the well-being in mind. For one thing, China has over 1 billion people. The best thing that's happening is what's happening now, that the birth rates are dropping and the population will shrink up. There is the governments act like corporations. They think there's unlimited growth in a a planet of limited volume. This is one of the best things to happen to China, is that the population might shrink up to, so they're not consuming everything. Not everything is about consumption. But also these governments, they want to force people, they want to make this happen, but they would have to deal with women's choices, and they'll never force women to do anything. Not that I'm advocating for that. I am not.
China's state news agency Xinhua, only 8.131 million marriages were registered in 2020, down 12.2% from the previous year. It was the 7th consecutive year of decline and marks a decade-long 90s who are already married is surprisingly high at 35%.
This is gullible. It's not surprising. One of the guys pointed out to me that women get married knowing that they're going to get divorced. They do not get married for a lifetime, and they know it. Women do not want to be with men. What it is, they get married when they understand the man's bribing them, and then when they're tired of them and they can keep their stuff, they leave them. That's what it is. So it's only surprising to people who don't want to admit what's the obvious human behavior of what's going on. Yeah, look how far the divorced people are in line. Exactly. Because the girls aren't interested in being married to men. It's that simple.
In China, many young people are now reluctant to get married, and more post-80s and post-90s see being single as a normal choice compared to their parents' generation.
I disagree. Men are reluctant to get married. Men are reluctant to get married. The women don't want to get married unless they can be bribed. The men are looking at marriage and saying they want to get married, but they know the price is too big. As you'll see, the women demand a car, a house, and a bride price in addition before they'll even accept the man. So she doesn't love him for himself. She doesn't give a shit about this guy. And these guys know it, but they still want to get married anyway, but they can't do it. So the men are the one who are reluctant. Not only are they reluctant, they're reluctant to try. They're not even reluctant to go with it because most men will admit they can't afford a house and a car to give to a woman for her fake love. Okay?
Marriage for Chinese women of childbearing age has been delayed by more than 4 years and continues.
Of course. Why would women want to sacrifice their early 20s and mid 20s for that matter when they're having fun, enjoying themselves? They get married, they've got to deal with a guy, which they don't want to deal with. And two, the man might expect something out of the relationship. So that means some kind of give and take, and they're not into that. Women are not into give and take with men. It's either 100% their way or they're not going to bother with them. Okay?
To trend higher. What causes such a low marriage rate among the post-90s nowadays?
Women do not want to get married to men. That's your answer, which these guys will never admit. Women only got to marry with men in the past because they felt they needed them to live their lives. And now that they don't need them, they've tossed them.
Several analysts believe that the primary reason is that the income of the young group is too low and the cost of marriage and children is too high.
Marriage shouldn't cost anything. If you want to go down the street and hang out with your friends, when these women want to hang with friends, they just do. They just show up at the door, knock on the door, and talk to them, right? You can do the exact same thing with a man. You will get together and like if two girls share an apartment and share the bills, it works in their favor, right? It'd be the same with living with a man. So the only reason that they say it's costly is because the woman doesn't want to work and the man can't afford it on his own. Now, I'm going to show this because I think it looks like they're actors and actresses, but they're basically talking, this is a case where a bride wants a particular car and they can afford it. So even though it might be a dramatization, I've seen this kind of behavior in the West from brides because they're not about getting married to a man. The wedding is to show that they're a special person and they want stuff. That's it. Okay. Now here you go. When a woman gets married, is it wrong to ask for a car, a house, and a bride price? Now, I don't know how big the bride price is, but this is women demanding that they get bribed. And the bribe is astronomical. Because, you know, housing prices are tough enough where I live, but they're actually fairly cheap. I'm sure China, buying a house in China would be incredible. And a car, and probably doesn't want a low-end car either. So this person who asked this is asking a rhetorical question. She's really saying, this is what I want. They do not love the man. They're not interested in him. They want to be bribed. What guy can afford this?
However, the woman cannot be blamed entirely. In contemporary
Wrong. The woman is 100% absolutely to blame because the man isn't making this demand of her. She doesn't have to make this demand. And some jackass in the comments tried to say, you know, it's a tradition. People throw away traditions if it gets in the way of what they want. Look at religions. You know, how people like the girls toss out traditional views of gender roles in the church when they don't like them. And then they make an excuse. tradition isn't making women do anything. They don't have to demand anything. They obviously don't want to be with men. They want that bribe. And it doesn't stop them from getting divorced. The divorce rate is through the roof. So what it is, the girls want demand this money from this guy who she doesn't love. She hangs around till she's done hanging around, when she's tired of it. And then she ditches the man and takes all her stuff. And men line up for this shitty deal. The only reason they aren't is because they can't afford their bride price. That's it. So this channel here saying this, they're full of shit. They're not willing to admit who is stopping marriage, and they don't want to blame women.
Contemporary China, where money worship is prevalent, end quote.
Well, who's doing the worshiping? Obviously, it's the women who are doing the worshiping. They are status chasers. They don't want to have to work for a living. They want a high status man, a high earning man to make their lives easy for them. And that's it. Men aren't to blame because men are not doing this to women. They aren't demanding women married. Matter of fact, women don't even approach men. So they can't make the demand in the first place. So this is what I'm talking about.
Marriage is likely to determine where women. Most of the post-90s population, one has to support both parents on their own. It means to give.
Well, there you go. Well, it's also a case where, like I said, if they get married, they can live together and actually pool the resources and live an easier life. So what it is the woman is saying, well, I don't want to work for a living, and I want at least the kind of living I've got now. So she wants a man to work or make at least double what she's making. So the lifestyle maintains while she doesn't have to work. Their lifestyle would actually be better if they gave 50-50. If they rented an apartment, they don't need a house. They could rent an apartment because the woman is going to live, the single woman is going to live in an apartment, right? So if she's got a man sharing the rent, everything gets better. So she doesn't want this deal. Obviously, and this is standard practice for women worldwide and historically wide. And this is the other thing. Now that I've gone as far as I need with that, it also goes to show you how the government doesn't care about the men in their society. Because obviously, the government doesn't want to look after the elderly. Over here in the West, what we do, we give pensions out. So the government doesn't want to have to look after its own people. So the people have to come around and start fighting with their government and say, no, the West gives out pensions that allows at least minimal existence for elderly. You start doing it. It's not my job. The elderly worked for the government since the time they were old enough to work. So the government owes them. So also, like I said, in addition, but that's neither here nor there because that's not really the issue with the women. They don't want to have to work for a living themselves, and they want a man who gives them a high lifestyle, and the men can't afford it, and so they're not going for it, right? So that's what this is really about. And the government is not willing to blame the women because this video isn't willing to blame the women. He said, we can't blame all the women for their choices and what they put on men. So what's the Chinese government going to do? It's going to tackle its men. It's not going to force women to do shit. So it's going to go after the men, and it has been going after their men. It blames men. Men gets blamed every time. That's why they're attacking so-called effeminate men, and why they're attacking men who play video games or have some kind of hobby beyond chasing these women that don't give a shit about them and just want to drain them dry. So that's why there has to be an effective MRM in China now. It needs effective MRM everywhere in the world. But the male citizens actually have to start fighting its government and say, no, we are not to blame. Either you go after the woman or you leave us the hell alone. Now, look at this. Honestly, I'm a person who likes children, but children in the house have almost exhausted everything an ordinary person has. On what basis can I afford to have a second or third child? I don't feel happy. So why have another one and let the child continue to suffer? The most significant responsibility for future generation is not to give birth. They're right. They're right about this. The government, like all governments, they only see the bottom line. They don't look at the future and say, geez, we're just burning up all our resources, making more people. The economy just has to grow, even though it's, exponentially, even though it can't. But again, it's like this, like there are people who have children who live in apartments. I mean, there's always been impoverished peoples who still had children. Like I said, it's just a case where the women make these demands and the man either ponies up or that's it. But this is the most important one. Look, 1990s have to make a mortgage repayment, care for elderly parents, raise 3 children, and still work 996. That means 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. So 72-hour work week. What's missing here, is it for both parents or is it just the man? It may just be the man. And there's no incentive for this. China, I don't think, is particularly religious. So it's not like people believe there's a heaven to go to after they die. So you only got one life. And China the government wants you to work yourself to death, the men to work themselves to death, so that they can then what? Just die, and that's it. And the Chinese government can say, oh, there's more people around to siphon off of. I'm not anti-government, but this is so, like, the people forming the government obviously are just, stupid traditionalists. They're tradcons, and they need to be replaced by people who know better. That's it. Now, I don't think I need to go any further with this, because the point has been made, is that the women don't want to get married, and they're only willing to get married if the man bribes them, and then they get divorced very quickly. And there's nothing for a man to gain. And the women are to blame 100%. Like I say, if women these women want to see their girlfriends, it doesn't cost them anything. They just walk down the street and talk to their girlfriends. Same with a guy living with them. If they had a guy and they wanted to be with that man, they would be together, and it costs them nothing. They don't have to have children even. They could live in the apartment together and share expenses, and everything would be easier. But just shows you that women don't want to be with men. So I hope you guys can finally come to that conclusion and deal with it. With that, goodbye, everyone.